you guys, I just wanted to take a minute and go over your quiz and help you with what you missed. And then I would like to give you some extra practice problems, and I would like you to retake this quiz. So on the first one, what you need to recognize on the first one is this is a positive 14. This is a negative 1.5 times by x equal to a negative 20. So when you are solving this equation, the very first thing you want to do is you want to find your variable term. You want to figure out what's happening to the variable. So here's the variable term. It's being multiplied by a negative 1.5. And before we can do anything with getting rid of that multiplication of a negative 1.5, we need to get rid of the 14 on this side. We need to get rid of the constant. Now, the way that we cancel out a positive 14 is to do a negative 14. That's what is going to make this right here a 0. And so we want to cancel that out by doing a negative 14, and then we have to do a negative 14 on the other side. So now we have negative 1.5 times by x equal to a negative 34. Okay, and then from there, to get rid of that multiplication of negative 1.5, we're going to have to divide by a negative 1.5. So we get x equals, in your calculator, it's going to show as a repeating decimal. So you would write it as 22.6, and then the 6 repeats. Okay, on the next one, you have x divided by a negative 3.2, and then subtract 15, and then that is equal to a negative 2. So when you have this x divided by negative 3.2, that's your variable term. So before you do anything else, you need to get rid of this minus 15. So you're going to add 15 to both sides. Now you have x divided by negative 3.2 equals a positive 13. And then to get rid of the division of a negative 3.2, you're going to multiply. So you have to multiply both sides by negative 3.2. So you get x equals a negative 41.6. Okay, on the next one, before you do anything else, you need to simplify that left side. We have some like terms that we can combine. So we need to combine the two constants. We have a negative 2, and then we also have a negative 6. We need to combine those, and then we're going to combine the two terms that have an x. So this becomes a negative 8 plus 10x equal to 52. And then from there, because this is our variable term being multiplied by 10, our next step is to get rid of this negative 8 by doing a positive 8. We're going to do a positive 8 on both sides. So 10 times x equals 60. And then we would divide by 10 on both sides. So x equals a 6. Okay, next one. We also need to simplify this one before we can solve. We have some fraction coefficients here, but that doesn't matter. We can just go ahead and use the calculator. When you add like terms together, you just add the coefficients and then you keep the variables the same. So the 1/8 x, that is going to get combined with the 3/8 x because they both have an x to the first power. So that's going to be a 4/8 x, and then we have a negative 3 equals negative 10. And then from here, we get rid of the minus 3 by doing a plus 3. So now we have 4/8 times by x equals a negative 10. Now this is where it gets a little bit tricky. This 4/8 is being multiplied by the x. So the only way to get rid of a multiplication is to use division. We have to divide both sides by 4/8. And in your calculator, the negative 7 needs to go in first and then divided by 4/8, because when you divide a fraction, the second one is going to get flipped and then you're going to multiply, okay? And so then your final answer on this one is going to be x equals a negative 14. Okay, last one, we have a 0.5 in front of the parentheses, x minus 10, and then we have a positive 0.5x, and then we have equals 15.8. So on this one, we first want to distribute, because when you're solving an equation, if anything needs to simplify, you always do that first. So we're going to simplify first, and then we are going to solve. Okay, so we distribute here, and a 0.5 times 6 is going to be a 3x, and then a 0.5 times a negative 10 is going to be a negative 5, and then we have a plus 0.5x equal to 15.8. So we can still continue to simplify this because the 3x and the 0.5x, that's going to combine to make a 3.5x. And then we still have our negative 5 equals 15.8. And then we add 5 to both sides. So we get 3.5x equals a 20.8. And then our last step is to divide by a 3.5. So that is going to end up giving us x equals, in the calculator, it is a decimal that doesn't repeat or doesn't end. And I asked you guys to round that to the hundredth spot. So you would do x equals 5.94. Okay, so now what I want you to do is turn your quiz over to the back side. I'm going to give you some other problems that are just like the ones that you saw. And I want you to take a minute and push pause on your video, do the 5 problems, and then I want you to push play and see if you got them correct. Okay, so I want you to go ahead and on the back of your paper, like I said, you're going to do these 5 problems, and then I want you to push pause on the video, and then I want you to come back to the video and push play, and then see if you got these correct. Okay, so for the first one, you should have first minused 15 from both sides. So that gave you a negative 1.2x equal to a negative 21. And then the next thing you need to do is to get rid of that multiplication of a negative 1.2. You are going to divide by a negative 1.2. So you're going to take the negative 21 and you're going to divide by a negative 1.2, and that would have given you 17.5. Okay, on the next one, you should have first added 15 to both sides. So now you have x divided by negative 4.1 equal to a 13. And then you needed to times this side by negative 4.1 to get rid of that division of negative 4.1. So when you take a 13 and you times by a negative 4.1, you should have got a negative 53.3. Okay, on the next one, you should have combined the 4x and the 5x to make a 9x. You should have combined the negative 4 and the negative 6 to make a negative 10. Then you would add 10 to both sides. So now you have 9 times x equals 60. And then your last step is to take that 60 and to divide by 9. And that one actually gave you a repeating decimal of 6.6 repeating. Okay, number 4, the variable's being multiplied by 1/2. And before you do anything with that, you should add 7. So 1/2 times by x equals a negative 3. And then from there, you need to get rid of the multiplication of 1/2 by using division. So you need to take the negative 3, you need to divide by 1/2. And you should have gotten negative 6. Okay, and then the last one, you should multiply first. You're going to distribute, and then you're going to combine like terms. So 0.7 times by 28 is 19.6. And then a 0.7 times by a negative 56 is a negative 39.2. Then you have plus 0.8x equals 17.2. So now you're going to combine like terms. The 19.6 gets combined with the 0.8. And that gives you 20.4 times by x minus 39.2 equal to a 17.2. And so then you are going to add a 39.2 to both sides. So 20.4x equals, when you take a 17.2 and you add it to 39.2, you get 56.4. And then the last step is to divide by a 20.4. So 56.4 divided by 20.4 ends up giving you a decimal that doesn't repeat and doesn't end. So if you round to the 100th spot, you will get x equals 2.76, final answer. Okay, so now you guys are ready to do the extra practice on Alex, and then or extra retest for this particular test. So there's some extra practice on Alex. There's 10 questions, and then I will give you a retake. Okay, good job.